Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a Plano Public Library virtual program. My name is Anna. I will be leading this program, and I am assisted today by Kathy. Would you like to say hi, Kathy?
Hello, everyone.
Um, so you can always check your email for more details about this program. Your microphone has been muted, but you can use the chat function to ask questions during the program. There should also be a Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen that you can use as well, in addition to the chat. Mm, we ask that you please be respectful when making comments. I am already sharing my screen, and this program will be recorded, and will be live on our YouTube page, in just a few days. Okay, so just to make sure that we are all where we are supposed to be, weaving for beginners. Um, Today we're going to go a little bit over the history of weaving. We're going to see how weaving has been interpreted by different cultures. We will go over two main ways of weaving flat patterns, and then we will talk a little bit about paper weaving as the next step for you to take. Mm. So, um, the history of weaving is as old as time. Woven fibers have been found that are more than 34,000 years old in Georgia. So we don't have a lot of fragments necessarily from weaving. We have some that were in caves or tombs, places that are dry that really preserve fabric. But as we all know, fabric wears out. I've got a hole in my sock right now. And fabric just deteriorates over time due to wear and tear. And especially in most climates, it just doesn't stay true to its original form. So the fact that we have woven uh, fragments, fibers that were spun and woven 34,000 years ago, that's a pretty big deal. In the Neolithic era, humans were weaving grass, stems, and tree branches to make baskets and shelters. And this is actually an example of one of the oldest pieces of fabric that we have. It is a woven textile that was found in a Peruvian cave dating back to 12,000 years ago. The textile items that were found in the Peruvian cave included fragments of fabric, such as this one, that could have possibly been used for bags, baskets, wall or floor coverings, or even bedding. And on this fragment of cloth, you can see different fabric dyes were used to paint patterns on the cloth, uh, which takes a lot of work, and a lot of artistry. So I always just love seeing this piece of fabric. Okay. Uh, in ancient Egypt, Egypt wove from many different fibers. So plant and animal, but they reserved the purest linen for mummification. And luckily, because they created tombs and pyramids, we can see many examples of the things that they wove, from clothing to sandals. And this mural shows a man working to spin fiber. So this is actually a spinning wheel, but then with that fiber, he would weave clothing, such as the little wrap around his legs. This vase shows two figures at a warp-weighted loom. Um, so the strings that go vertically are called warp, and you can see that they are tied together and have little weights on them that should be uniform to keep an even tension between all of the strings. The Greeks made many different cloths that they draped over their bodies. And then, because we're the library, we're of course going to talk about literature. In Homer's Odyssey, Penelope was waiting for her husband Odysseus to return. And she was sure that he was alive, but everybody else told her to move on and marry somebody else. So, to keep her suitors at bay, she tells them that she is going to weave a funeral shroud for Laertes, her father-in-law. And she promises to choose one of the suitors when the weaving is finished. So she weaves by day, and then each night she unpicks the shroud until she is finally discovered. But of course, being the Odyssey, Odysseus does return, and they live somewhat happily ever after. But I just love this example of weaving in the tale to indicate time passing. Weaving in East Asia. So the weaving of silk from silkworm cocoons has been known in China since about 3500 BC. Um, Silk that was intricately woven and dyed, showing a well-developed craft, has been found in a Chinese tomb dating back to 2700 BCE. So again, we're not just talking about weaving a plain fabric, we are talking about decorating the weaving and really making it something worthy of show. This is a Japanese print from the 1800s depicting a woman on a horizontal loom, probably weaving silk. Mm, so for a lot of weaving, the structures are actually vertical. Um, they are up and down, but here we can see a horizontal loom. This is from a medieval manuscript, and shows a monk weaving at the loom with his bare feet stepping on these treadles, that would allow him to push a shaft really easily over and under one way, and then when he stepped on the opposite pedal, it would be under over the opposite way. Mm, So medieval Europe created the horizontal loom, which advanced the quality and speed with which fibers could be woven. Okay. And now some weaving terminology. So I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, but the warp, are the strands that go up and down in a weaving. They run vertical. And then the weft are the strands that run horizontally in a weaving. Um, and there's other weaving terminology, of course, but those are the primary ones that we worry about. We worry about the warp and the weft. Typically, you have your warp all set up, and then you start weaving the weft one after another. You can see under, over, under, over, under, over, and so on. So you may ask, how do we weave patterns into our fabric? It's not just mm, plain cloth that we weave all the time, right? Um, so there are two different ways to weave flat patterns. There is plain weave, um, with patterns in the colors of weft and warp. So plain weave is typically what we have been taught in grade school. It's that under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, each strand being used just once, either under or over, and then moving on to the next strand. Um, However, by utilizing different colors, we can actually create very interesting patterns. So these patterns are also called color and weave if you choose to research after this. Um, that's the search term that you would use. We can also use one color for the warp and another color for the weft and alternate how many strands we go over and under. I call this uneven weaving. So instead of going under one and then over one, we can go under one over three, under one over three, under one over three. And that will create a different pattern depending on where we start. So this is plain weave. We can see that the warp was red, with a weft that was green. And this almost looks like a checkerboard because it is. It's very uh, predictable. It's very samey all throughout. So in this, if this were a larger piece of cloth, our eyes would see the same pattern all over. However, using plain weave, we can also create different patterns like houndstooth. So houndstooth is created by using different colors in the under over. So first we'll maybe start with black, black, and then we'll go white, white, black, black, white, white, black, black, white, white, and so on and so forth. And we'll do that for the warp as well as the weft. Each time it's going to be AABB, AABB. Another plain weave pattern that we can weave is called log cabin, usually. Um, and what log cabin does is it creates these alternating patterns of horizontal and vertical. So to create a log cabin pattern, we would do one strand purple, one strand black, one strand purple, one strand black, one strand purple, one strand black, and so on. But instead of repeating this in perpetuity, we would end it on an odd number. So we would do maybe five, maybe seven, maybe nine stretches of A, B, A, B, A. And then we would repeat that pattern for the weft as well. Um, it should be noted that plaids are also created using plain weave. Plaids are a little bit more complicated. This has so many strands in it. However, a very simple plaid would be something like three colors, three strands of one color, uh, one strand of color B, one strand of color C, one strand of color B, and then you repeat. Um, you kind of want to have something that goes in even numbers. So this total set has six strands, and the the warp and weft would repeat this pattern as well. Are there any questions so far?
Mm, Not yet.
Okay. Um, Next up, we're going to talk about uneven weaving. And this is one of the basics, twill. Um, Everybody should be familiar with twill. It's what most denim is woven in. So you'll usually see a dark blue on one side, for example, this with white specks in a kind of diagonal pattern. And then on the reverse, it's going to be much wider. So imagine if this purple was white with just a few blue strands going in a diagonal pattern. And this is twill. Um, so twill is usually done with three over, one under, and then you start shifting. So this one was done. It's a little confusing because the blue is actually the weft. This should be a vertical image, but I made it horizontal to fit better on the screen. Um, but just trust me when I say the blue is the weft. So normally when you would go one over and then three under, one over, three under, you then start with just three under, one over, three under, one over. You shift it one, so then you go two under in the beginning, but then keep the same pattern. One over, three under, one over, three under, one over, three under, and so on. And twill is one of those really cool patterns that can have a different effect depending on which side of the fabric that you're looking on. Okay, so we talked about weaving around the world. Uh, this is examples from Cherokee River cane patterns that are also made with an uneven weaving style. So although these are primarily baskets and reeds used to weave these, it's the same weaving process as you would do for string and fiber. Um, so this specific pattern is a Cherokee pattern called the Chief's Daughter. And you can see in the pattern that the number of under overs varies. So we have here uh three under, one over, three under, five over, three under, one over, three under, five under. But that's going to be different from this next round, which is just three under, three over, three under, three over, and so on. So uneven weaving can create patterns like this as long as you are intentional about each line. And then I wanted to show other examples of the chief daughter pattern that are a little bit varied. This pattern is usually enhanced with some variations, although they do all have some sort of repetitive element to them. So here, I think this one is one of my favorite examples. You can see the different colors of the warp and the weft used to create this very mesmerizing kind of look. Okay. And then these sometimes make my eyes hurt, but if I kind of squint at them, they show me the pattern much more easy. Um, so a number of decorative patterns can be made with weaving as well. So this one has a lot of X crosses with star burst patterns. And this is another example of a decorative pattern that can be made using weaving. Um, Although this one is a little bit more organic, I feel. It looks almost like leaves to me. Uh, yeah. These decorative patterns don't have names like the Chief's Daughter did, but they can be found in drafting books. Um, so I mentioned that there's lots of weaving terminology. One of those weaving terminologies is draft. Um, a draft is a pattern for weaving. And it's not like a writing draft. The draft is the final product in weaving. And here are just more examples of uneven weaving where we vary the number of unders and overs. Okay. So you may be asking yourself, where do I find these patterns? And I'm going to recommend a website called handweaving.net. Um, I should have had this open to the first page, but handweaving.net is a wonderful database of sorts where you can browse drafts that have already been created. There's a draft editor if you want to create a new draft from scratch, and they have video tutorials for those as well. They have a draft repeats tool, which allows you to see what the pattern looks like on a smaller or larger scale. And then you can also edit the color of your draft. So even if this draft is red and white, you can see what that color combination would look like in green and orange, for example. Mm, so on and so forth. So when you browse drafts, which I highly recommend you do, you can select a collection from here, the drop-down menu, and you'll see that there's many, many different options. There's the tartan collection, there's twills, and there's a lot of patterns. Some of them may be in a foreign language, like this one, which I believe is in German, actually. But you'll see the draft is already created for you, and you don't have to be fluent in another language to see what the actual pattern looks like if you would like to weave it. Okay, so that's my little plug for handweaving.net. It is absolutely free, and it is one of the best resources that I have ever found on weaving. So, I am actually going to highly recommend if you are starting off with weaving to do paper weaving first. Um, Paper weaving has lots of benefits. You get to learn about color combinations and see what colors work together and which ones don't. Paper weaving is much faster than traditional weaving because usually the strips of paper are at least a quarter inch thick, um, whereas a thread is much thinner than that, of course. So you get to see the structures much more quickly than you would in regular weaving. You also get to learn about color and weave or plain weave designs and learn about weave structures. There's also the added bonus of not worrying about warp tension or yarn choices. When you choose yarn to weave with, it's every yarn is going to be a little bit different. You want to make sure that you have something that can stay under tension, usually. Um, Weaving is also just a little bit tricksy with cloth because a lot of the beginning weaving looms are actually not meant for weaving. They're meant for tapestry weaving, which is a subset of weaving in a way, but has entirely different rules on how to make patterns and designs in tapestry weaving than you would in traditional weaving, in hand weaving. So, yeah, you don't have to worry about your warp tension and making sure that your strings are all taut enough, but still flexible enough to go over and under however many times you need. And you don't have to worry about your yarn choices as much either. So, mm, when you are doing paper weaving, I like using quilling strips. Those are already pre-cut strips that are all a uniform length, but of course you can cut them yourself. Um, you would choose a pattern. You can either do a plain weave pattern or an uneven weaving as well. And you would line paper strips on top of cardstock vertically to create the warp in the colors for your pattern. So you would want to make sure that they are taped at the top of the cardstock to keep them in place. And then you should be able to lift them up and down as you need to go over and under. You do not want to tape them on both the top and the bottom, because that doesn't give you a lot of give to actually weave. You want one end to be fairly loose. Following your pattern, you would want to weave the weft in the appropriate colors. And then when you are done, you can fold the weft strips over the edge of the cardstock and tape them to the back of the cardstock. You can also tape the bottom of the warp to the cardstock as well, and then display your beautiful paper weaving. I am realizing now I did not update this PowerPoint with photos of some paper weavings, but they do look very impressive. Um, they're this wonderful graphic element that I keep framed in my house, honestly. Um, so, um, if you choose to explore more weaving, I did want to mention that the library has a weaving steam kit uh, with a tapestry loom. Um, so this loom is great for tapestry weaving, but you can still try to use it to weave either plain weave or uneven weaving if you should choose. Um, the kit has instructions on how to use everything. I would just If you are wanting to try to weave with um, either plain weaving or uneven weaving, you would want to make sure that the thread that you use to warp your loom is the same thickness as the thread or yarn that you are using to weft as well. Are there any questions?
No questions at this time.
Okay. Well, this was a short little program today, but I did want to encourage you to come to some of our upcoming programs. So, uh, these are all arts and culture programs. There's I Want to Learn a New Language. However, the thing that I find most fascinating is that we actually have a fiber art with Christine Miller. It is a ticketed program. It's on Monday, July 7th, from 6 p.m. to 7:30 at Davis Library. So if you would like to come to this program, I would highly encourage you to come closer to 5:30 because that is when we are going to start giving out tickets for the program. Um, I'm not entirely sure what fiber art Christine will be doing, but I am sure that it's going to be a great one. If you are more interested in art, we do have composition in art happening at Parr Library Sunday, July 13th from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And that can help you with weaving just by understanding design and layout. Um, you may also want to come to some of our sit and stitch programs. Sit and stitch is for everybody that uses needle, thread, fiber. So typically, it's a lot of knitting and crochet, but we have had weavers in the past, and we have also had embroiderers and cross stitchers come. So it is a wonderful time to just talk and familiarize yourself with a nice little fiber arts community. And those happen typically twice a month. So this one's July 14th and July 28th from 7 to 8 p.m. at Haggard Library. We also have Still Life Studio if you are interested in upgrading your drawing skills. So, one last time, I am going to open the floor for questions. Okay, thank you very much for attending our virtual program. You can find more resources and programs at planolibrary.org, and we hope to see you at a program in the future or at the library in the future. We always welcome happy faces.